Hello and welcome to Hammer Time, a Hammer horror podcast, part of the Evolution of Horror Network. I'm Becky Darke, a film critic and amateur, and I'm joined by my co-host, human encyclopedia of film and TV, and Hammer superfan, Kevin Lyons. Hi, Kev.
Hi, Becky. Are you ready for this?
I've just about managed to click myself back into reality from just sort of staring into the grim mid-distance for, after the end of this film.
So when you said, how are you, my answer is going to be, I watched The Damned last night.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. How do you think I am?
How do you think I bloody am? Yeah, absolutely. If you've not seen this film, buckle up.
Yeah.
Brace yourself, basically, yeah.
In this podcast, Kevin and I are watching and discussing every horror film in Hammer's back catalogue. And this week, we don our black leather, and tackle radioactive children with The Damned from 1963.
Black leather, smash, smash, smash. Black leather, crash, crash, crash.
Our Hammer Time discussions are all spoilerific, and we go into plot details and chat about the endings of the films. So if you'd like to watch The Damned before you listen to this episode, the best thing is to pick it up on Blu-ray from Indicator, which I think I said at the end of the last episode I'd managed to do completely by accident. I managed to pick it up for about £6 or something from CEX, which I was absolutely over the moon about.
What a bargain.
What a bargain.
What a bargain.
I might take it back now.
Oh, no, don't do that. You're not selling it here, are you? You're really not selling it here.
We'll come on to how good it is in a minute.
Yeah.
I remember when we talked about Taste of Fear a couple of weeks ago, and we said to our listeners before we sort of started diving deep into things, that if there was any film that we had discussed so far that the spoiler warning was particularly pertinent, it was Taste of Fear, because obviously it's a very twisty-turny film, and we didn't want people to, we didn't want to spoil for people all of the kind of rug pulls and surprises. I would say for me, The Damned comes in a close second to that, not necessarily for the same reasons, but because of the punch that the ending packs. And I don't think you will get the same effect from it if you hear us talking about all that before you watch the film.
Exactly. If you've not seen it, I mean, we say this all the time, but honestly, these spoilers are serious for this one.
Yeah.
If you have seen it, you know where we're going. But if you haven't seen it, it's... get out there and watch it now by hook or by crook. Go and see it. You won't be disappointed. That's the short version of the story, I think.
So our producer Mike hasn't seen this yet, and I described it to him as Quadrophenia meets Threads.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh my God, this sounds right up my street." I was like, "Honestly, you will love it."
Yeah.
And so we've, Kev, haven't we? Today we've given him strict warning that he's not to listen in on this.
No, that's right.
And he has to watch the film before he edits it for next week, because
exactly, yeah, it's we've told him to just turn off his headphones. We'll text him when we're finished. Just don't listen to anything that we're saying.
So it's been a while, Kev, since we've seen a black and white atomic sci-fi from Hammer. We've been off in the Gothic castles since we discussed things like Quatermass and X the Unknown. And we've done a couple of thrillers by this point, but this one seems to kind of meet the black and white thriller, like something like Taste of Fear, and those really early ones, those old sort of atomic sci-fis that we talked about right at the beginning of our show.
It does feel like a bit of a throwback, doesn't it?
But yeah, it does.
But when you're actually watching it, by the time you get to the end, you realise that this isn't a throwback. This is sort of glancing back at those early films, but it's actually for 1961, which is actually when it was shot. It was actually very, very modern. It's
dragging all of that stuff, all of the paranoia and fear around nuclear war, nuclear monsters, nuclear power, and dragging it, sort of kicking and screaming from the early 50s into the early 60s.
That's right, yeah. I mean, like I say, it was shot in 61, but, 62, we had the Bay of Pigs crisis, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world came as close as it ever came to nuclear war. That old nuclear clock was down to seconds. I probably mentioned this on other podcasts in the Evolution of Horror, but my parents told me several times they didn't think that I was going to make it to my first birthday.
God.
Because people were that terrified that this was it was going to happen. So this was, although it was delayed, its release was delayed, it was still quite timely. The fear of nuclear power and nuclear obliteration had been ramped up even more by the time we got to this
Yeah,
point.
exactly, yeah. So what's the story behind the production of The Damned?
Well, we need to start with this director, really, don't we, with Joseph Losey. And you'll remember that name. He directed a short film for Hammer called A Man on a Beach.
That's
in
right.
1955. And he was set to direct, and you've mentioned it already, X the Unknown. And he was going to be the director, but he clashed with the star of that film, Dean Jagger. He was a very virulent anti-communist, and Losey was quite left-leaning. And there was a little bit of a sort of hoo-ha between the two of them, and poor old Joe got booted off the film.
Yeah.
But in 1961, jump forward, 5-6 years, Hammer got him back, mainly at the behest of Columbia Pictures, who were their, distributor at the time. They thought, it'd be good, let's get Joseph Losey back. He was really starting to make a name for himself at this point. His best work was still to come, but there was a lot of buzz about Joseph Losey. He was a really good director. And Hammer had bought this book called The Children of Light by H.L. Lawrence, first published in 1960, and Anthony Hines was working on adapting that. Seems like an odd choice for Hammer, perhaps, at the time, because it is a proper science fiction novel.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's like a nuclear paranoia story when the Gothics were at their peak.
Yeah.
And the psychological horrors were just about to take off. But I've said this so many times, haven't I, about the diversity of Hammer's product at the time. Look at the things we're not covering in this, because they're not horror films. They were still making comedies, dramas, thrillers, all sorts. And this just sort of fitted in, I think. They just thought, well, we want to do something different again. Let's do this.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it, what you were saying as in sort of our introduction, really, how it does feel like a sort of throwback to the earlier films. But the novel, H.L. Lawrence's novel, is 1960. So we really are bringing everything, like it's very contemporary.
It feels like a throwback in terms of it being a science fiction novel in black and white. But when you see it and they've got all the sort of paranoia about not only sort of nuclear power, but paranoia about young people.
Yes.
So we've had teenagers since Quatermass, and now we've got these sort of, rebellious youth.
Yeah.
In the film. And so that's all very current. That's all very modern, So they brought Joseph Losey back. Unfortunately, Joseph Losey proved to be a bit of a difficult chap to work with, shall we say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anthony Hines had written this script. Losey turned up and said, no, I don't like that. So he got his frequent collaborator, Ben Barsman, to write a new one. And then he decided, no, I don't like that one either. So he got in Evan Jones to write it. It was provisionally called On the Brink.
Okay.
But Hammer wanted it called The Damned, because that sounds much more like a Hammer title, doesn't it?
Definitely.
And apparently they were working on it, well, at least up until 2 weeks before filming started, and rewriting it during production.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it's Dennis Meikle, who is a sort of famous Hammer historian. He said in his book The History of Horrors, Rise and Fall of the House of Hammer, he said no one except Losey and Jones now knew what the film was actually to be about.
Wow.
So it was a really difficult shoot, which is astonishing then that it turns out to be such an incredibly good film.
Literally what I was about to say. When you hear these stories about kind of troubled productions and, scripts being written on set and sort of handed to actors as they're calling action, it's always, it's very regularly in the context of the film being a bit of a disaster and maybe not living up to its potential. But that absolutely can't be said about The Damned, right?
Not at all. No, I mean, a lot of the time you can see the trouble on screen. You can see that behind the scenes trouble. I don't think you can see it here.
No.
It has a few flaws here and there, but that's nothing to do with them rewriting the script.
Yeah, interesting. So Evan Jones, this is a name that I hadn't come across, and so I looked him up. He seems like a very interesting character.
Yes, he was really, wasn't he?
He was born in Jamaica, I believe. So he was like a British Jamaican. And as you say, had this long collaboration with Joseph Losey. And I wonder if that kind of close working relationship that they had helped to sort of overcome some of those.
Oh, yes, I'm sure. Yeah.
Those sort of teething problems.
I think with the problems that he was having with Hammer, because, apparently Anthony Hines did not like him at all. Really didn't like him. And I think because of that, he wanted someone on board who was friendly, a friendly
sympathetic
face. Sympathetic
to the cause.
Yeah, exactly. And, sort of having the excuse of, we're still rewriting the script meant that he could have Evan on set with him.
Yeah.
And so, he was just, I guess he was there just because of all of the people he was going to be working with, because it was entirely Hammer crew, that this was the one sort of link with the rest of his career. And so he felt safe, I think, having Evan Jones on board.
Yeah, and like I say, I wonder if that's what sort of overcame some of the other issues that might have come about and shown on screen, as you say.
Yeah, definitely. I think, they seem to be quite sort of simpatico with each other.
Yeah.
So I think, when they did have an issue on set, they could kind of just look at each other and say, right, we need to do something with this, and they just got it.
I love it when you've got a really close working relationship with somebody, but working with them for donkey's years, and you almost don't need to say anything, do you? You've sort of got that language between you, and it makes everything so much easier. So that makes sense.
I like to imagine them being on location and filming something, and sort of, Losey and Evan just sort of like looking at each other and shaking their heads. They're, right, okay, tonight back in the hotel, we rewrite that whole scene,
I like to picture them both with like a 99 in hand.
Sitting on the beach. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure Joseph Losey was a 99 on the beach kind of guy, to be honest.
Strawberry Mivvy, maybe.
Maybe, yes. Maybe now you're talking.
So let's do the plot of the movie. As always, I have stolen this mercilessly from Letterboxd. In Weymouth in the 1960s, an American tourist and a troubled young woman are chased by her biker gang leader brother to a top-secret British government facility that conducts experiments on children. So, I think from everything we've said so far, Kev, it's pretty clear that we both like this one.
No, I love this one. I do. Like I say, it's got some faults, but I do think this is an extraordinary film. Not just an extraordinary Hammer film, an extraordinary film. It's it does things. I was thinking this the other day that we've had now, this is our third week where we've reached an ending to a Hammer film and been in bits. We were both the same, weren't we? I mean, sort of seen them separately. I've seen it like a dozen times. It was your first go, I think.
First go at The Damned, yeah.
Yeah. And we both came to the same conclusion that ending just shouldn't be allowed, should it? It just hurts too much. We'll get to that as we go along.
I messaged the group that you and Mike and I are in, and I said something like, guys, I will send the talking points for The Damned by the end of the day, but in the meantime, holy shit.
Yeah. And I think you followed it up with "I'm not all right."
I'm not okay. Honestly,
yeah. This film will do that to you.
This is a film that packs a punch for sure, and a bit of a gut punch at that.
Most definitely, yeah.
But
you're not the same person at the end of this film that you were at the beginning.
No, I think
it's one of those films.
Absolutely true, and like you say, so we had Captain Clegg a couple of weeks ago. I was in absolute bits at the end of that, sobbing my heart out. It felt like last week. Obviously, we had Phantom of the Opera, which is incredibly sad, and now The Damned, which isn't. So for me, and again, we will come on to talk about specifics, but generally for me, this isn't a film that made me sad. I just thought it was unbelievably bleak. That is the word that really sort of sprung to mind for me.
It makes me angry at the end of the film. That's that's my overwhelming emotion at the end of this film, is the anger. And there is this sort of appalling sadness We will get to it. We'll talk about it. But the words "please help us" have never hurt quite as much as they have in this film.
Correct.
The final words, "please help us," is just heartbreaking stuff, really.
But before you get to the bleak ending, there is some really exciting, sort of frenetic, and as you say, Kev, this sort of focus on the youth, young people in this film, which we haven't really seen before, or certainly not this centrally, and certainly not young people in this like contemporary setting.
That's right, yeah.
Some of the stuff that really kind of we'll come to talk about the characters, but just in terms of the experience of watching the film, some of the stuff that really kind of had me on the edge of my seat and kind of almost watching through my eyes at points is there's some incredible direction from Losey and cinematography from Arthur Grant. Because you've got this like biker gang sort of down by the seaside in Weymouth, these teddy boys and a teddy girl who are racing around on their motorbikes. And honestly, I mean, firstly, motorbikes scare the living shit out of me. I think they are so terrifying.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was on one at points during this. Like the dynamism of the way that there are sequences shot in this film. There's a race at one point where Joan jumps on her motorbike and she says, last one to the unicorn. And so she gets a bit of a head start and she rides off on her bike and all the lads jump on theirs and sort of chase her. And you are going through the centre of this seaside town. And it is just remarkably shot. Absolutely brilliant stuff.
There's some great close-ups, aren't there, of Shirley Ann Field, who plays Joni?
Yeah.
And she's like, you can see her actually controlling the bike. Now, I'm assuming she's on a low loader at this point, and the camera's sitting there, and she's quite safe. But it looks really hair-raising. It looks like she's actually... And I'm fairly sure, looking at some of the medium to long shots, that that's definitely Oliver Reed, who plays her brother, King. Yeah. That's definitely him riding his bike. And certainly there's a shot, I was asked about this and I've not been able to get to the bottom of this. There's a shot where a dog runs out across the road in front of them. I don't know if that was a happy accident or that was planned. But it's like, I love the way Oliver Reed, if it was a happy accident, the way it's definitely him on the bike and he just shouts, "Get out of it," as he's on high speed, And it's like, whoa, this is really like that poor dog. He's going to get run over, It's all brilliantly done. That sequence, that's going to be one of my sort of key moments in the film because it's just so brilliantly shot by Arthur Grant and directed by Losey. Losey had a real talent here for suspense. He's got a slow burn to start with, but then when we realise what's going on, he just ramps it up, and we get a little sort of mini example of that in the motorbike chase.
Yeah.
When it's incredibly suspenseful. You just thinking they're gonna kill themselves. These crazy kids, one of them's going to die. Yeah. And, spoiler alert, they don't, but it's still very hair-raising. Even when you've seen it half a dozen times like I have, it's still a really hair-raising moment. And particularly, that, like I say, those close-up shots of Shirley Ann Field, who seems to be riding the motorbike.
Yeah.
And it's like... I have to tell myself she's on a low loader.
Just to comfort yourself for her safety.
But there's no speeded up footage. You can see it's not speeded up, and you just think, oh, please let her be on a low loader, because, it's like... That's really scary otherwise.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Unless she was a secret biker that she never let on about and she was just really good on motorbikes. I don't know, but,
I'd love that. I'd love that if that was true. The other sequence, while we're just talking about kind of direction and the camera, that, again, really leans into exactly what you were just saying, Kev, about Joseph Losey's... like suspenseful direction and how good he is at that, is there is a POV shot where one of the soldiers on the government facility is walking through the sort of dormitories where they keep the children.
That's right, yes.
And it's this amazing POV shot. It's very slow. and you can just hear his footsteps, but it's like they're your footsteps.
That's
like
right.
literally,
Yes.
it's like being in VR. It is incredible. And it's this very long, slow sequence where he's basically the camera is taking us on a tour essentially around this dormitory. So you go through a classroom, and then there's like a little play area, I think, and then there's their beds and stuff at the back where they sleep. And it's not until right at the last moment that the camera then spins and you see who you actually are, if that makes
right.
sense. Like whose
Yeah.
footsteps you are treading in. And that, I just thought it was extraordinary. I loved it.
It's incredible. And, there's another shot, which, again, is one of my favourites, so I'll talk more about at the end, involving a helicopter.
Oh, my God.
As action sequences go, that's extraordinary. Hammer had never done action quite like this, I don't think.
No.
It's very modern looking at times, although it's a throwback to earlier styles and genres. I think there's still a very modern feel to some of the action scenes in this, which is really, really quite something. I've never associated Joseph Losey with being an action director. A brilliant director, but not really specifically an action director. But blimey, he doesn't pull it off here, doesn't he?
Yeah, he really does.
Really good. He really does.
So we've mentioned that, this is by the seaside. We've mentioned things like kids racing through the streets on their motorbikes. And it feels, again, very fresh, very different to be on location, out of the studios, out of those stuffy old mansions, sort of feeling that sense of place. So was this filmed in Weymouth?
It was, yes. Weymouth and Portland Bill. And with the interior shot back of that stuffy old studio at Bray. But that's, they had to do that because, there's basically these kids have been irradiated and are being sort of bred basically to survive a future nuclear war. You can't really interact with them because they're so radioactive. So they're kept in this kind of cave on the cliffs. There's no way they would have got into the caves to actually film there. They just wouldn't have controlled the environment. No. You see the opening to the caves and the tunnels or whatever. But everything was reproduced back at Bray. But yeah, there's a lot of location footage. We used to go through Weymouth, me and my family, when I was a kid, on our way to Jersey on holiday. We used to get the car ferry from there. And I never saw any of the town because we used to turn up in the car, get on the car ferry, get out at the other end, come back 2 weeks later and just drive through the town.
Right.
A few years ago, I did go to Weymouth to have a look at some of these locations. And they've changed a lot, of course they have. But you still get that rather good sense of what they saw in the town, of what they saw when they were looking for a location. It made sense to shoot it here.
Yeah.
So, you've got things like there's the Edgecliff establishments, which is where they're keeping these children. And we'll probably discuss a little bit later on why it's important that it's called the Edgecliff establishment for 2 reasons. But this was an abandoned Admiralty Underwater Weapons Division base that they managed to get to use the exteriors for.
Amazing.
And Freya's studio, that's an old pumping house near Chain House on Portland Bill. So these are all proper recognisable locations. The cave, which obviously is still there, Rudge Porricks near Portland Bill. You see loads of Weymouth Town Centre and the seafront. It's gorgeous. Yeah. It's one of those things, you watch it, you think, I wish it was summer. I wouldn't mind going down there this weekend for a day trip. It's, because we're recording this, it's very, very, very wet February, but not really.
It's not... It's not the weather for it today, but I think we should add it to our upcoming Hammer Time tour, where we're going to all of these locations and places that are linked to the films we've been talking to. I think we need a trip to the seaside.
Becky and Kev's Grand Tour. That's what we're going to do. Becky and Kev's Grand Tour. Yeah, we're going to go all over the place and pointing out, and then we'll realise after we've been saying, and this is such and such, and this is such and such, we'll turn around, or I'll turn around and I'll realise I've bored everybody to death with this location stuff. You're all down the pub and I'm just standing there on the top of this cliff on my own. Oh, okay, right.
Just give you a call. Kev, we're in the Dog and Duck when you're ready.
We're in the Dog and Duck, come on, when you're ready. We've had enough of these nonsense about pump houses and strangely named cave entrances.
We're thirsty.
And rubbish.
Where are you?
We're thirsty, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the kind of biker gang. At one point, they're referred to as Teddy Boys.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess they're teenagers, you know, as teenagers were just starting to become a thing.
Well, Joni does mention that she's 20.
She's 20. And I mean, you know, I know that in other films you get people playing teenagers who are like, you know, 35. But Oliver Reed certainly doesn't look like a teen, does he? And I think it might be Sid, who's one of the other bikers. He says at one point, I know it's kids stuff hanging around in a gang.
Yeah.
So I guess they are just sort of their early 20s, let's say, maybe late teens, early 20s.
I get a feeling with them that they've been a biker gang for some years, from their teenage years.
Yeah.
And now they're sort of on that cusp of becoming adults.
Yeah. Of
growing up, and this is kind of the last hurrah. This is probably the last summer that they'll have.
You do get that feeling, don't you? Yeah.
It's kind of all over for them because, you know, at the end, King does start to take a certain amount of responsibility. Mm-hmm. That's the Oliver Reed character. But, you know, it does feel like this is the sort of the end of days for that gang. And what a horrible way for it to end, you know. I
know, what a miserable last summer.
Exactly, yeah. Those people who do make it, and I should warn you, not everybody gets out of this film alive. Those who are still alive at the end are probably going to be haunted by the events of this film for their entire lives. It's amazing. But yeah, this is Biker Gang. One of the problems I have sometimes particularly with British films that try to do, you know, sort of youth culture, and we're going to see this happen again with Hammer, is a lot of the times they were, I mean, you know, teenagers had emerged, so they were a good target audience. They had disposable income. They were out there working, and they didn't have the responsibilities of a full-blown adult. We'd got this new interim period where kids weren't getting married at 16, 17. They were waiting and going out and buying records and going to, you know, sort of coffee bars or whatever and spending money. So filmmakers wanted a bit of that.
Yeah.
And so you begin to see more films aimed at those, or at least featuring those kind of young people. The problem was, I always found with these things, that the filmmakers, you kind of get the impression they hadn't actually met a teenager or a 20-something, at least not a contemporary one. Joseph Losey was 52 when filming began on these. Evan Jones was 34, which was positively ancient back then. You know, Anthony Hines was just shy of 40. I mean, these guys didn't know what the kids were up to in the slightest bit, apart from what they read in tabloid headlines. And of course, that informs a lot of this. Oliver Reed was actually 23.
Okay.
Doing this. Shirley Ann Field was 25, playing 20. She can get away with it. They look and feel right. They at least they've got that bit right. They haven't got that bit where they've got people who are quite clearly in their mid-20s playing 16-year-olds.
Not like Grease.
Not like Grease, no. I swear some of those were in their 30s. But anyway, really, yeah. I mean, you saw a lot of that in slasher films as well.
That's right, yes, you do.
You saw a lot of like 20s, early 30s people dressed in school uniforms. You just think, oh, no, this is also wrong. This is also wrong. But Teddy Boys in particular have been a bit of a bête noire for grown-up society for several years, you know, from the sort of mid to late 50s onwards into the 60s, the tabloid stories all about their alleged violence and their antisocial behaviour and everything. They were kind of a media panic at the time.
Yeah.
And there's an element here, of course, as well of the rockers, the arch enemy of the mods. You know, they're wearing their leather gear and everything. And this film was finally released in 1963. In 1964, we get the famous Quadrophenia moment.
Yeah.
Where, you know, sort of the clashes on Brighton Beach and, you know, sort of Clacton and Hastings over the bank holidays and stuff. So the public, particularly the grown-up public, who, let's face it, grown-up back then was 30. You know, 30, I mean, 63, I'm barely grown up, but 30, I was absolutely not grown up. But back in the 60s, you were grown up by 30. You had kids, you've got a mortgage, you've got a job that you're going to have for life and all the rest of it. They were looking at these young kids absolutely aghast. They were terrified of them, you know. And I think that's what we're looking at here, this sort of idea that the grown-ups were becoming increasingly concerned about these wayward kids.
Yeah.
You know, so teenagers was a new thing. There had been sort of, you know, troublesome youth gangs earlier, but nothing as codified as it was now. And, you know, the tabloids in particular were looking at them and saying, you know, youth is out of control.
Yeah, well, and that's very much what you get, isn't it? And you were so right just now, Kev, when you said that the paranoia in this film is kind of twofold.
Yeah.
Because you've got that much larger existential paranoia of the nuclear threat and this inevitability that the public servant Bernard keeps going on about, which really winds me up.
He's convinced, isn't he? He's more convinced than I am that this coming.
Absolutely convinced. And he keeps like justifying his monstrous actions by talking about the inevitability of what's coming. I'm like,
I know,
all right, Bernard, calm down. Anyway, so there's that paranoia, but then you've almost got this like B-plot paranoia, which is running through the entire film, which is this sort of paranoia of old people against the young. And
that's right.
They really do, the gang in this really do like lean into the that sort of stereotypically media-led violent image of young people, because they are literally, from the moment we meet them, they like hunt. They send Joan out as like a honey trap.
Yeah.
So she's kind of walking up and down the seafront, basically looking for guys who are on their own and look like they might have a bit of cash on them.
That's right.
And then she sort of flutters her eyelashes at them.
Have you never seen a clock tower before? You're one of the great lines.
Incredible line. And, you know, gets them interested, takes them off, and then they get jumped by the boys.
And in fact, that's the very first thing we see in the film, isn't it? We actually see them doing that. That's the very first scene in the film.
Exactly. And there's a really like organized kind of sinister edge to the way that they're portrayed. So there's this song, it sort of goes black leather, crash, 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 black leather, smash, smash, smash. And they're singing it. And actually the film opens with it like non-diegetic.
That's right, yes.
And then it becomes diegetic when the gang are whistling it. She sings it to herself as she's sort of walking along. And not only do they whistle it in this slightly threatening manner, as they're sort of going along like these jackboot thugs, essentially. I thought, Kev, did you think that did it remind you of like the Droogs?
Oh, very much.
Clockwork Orange.
Very much. I think Clockwork Orange was published in 1962, so this actually predates that, which is interesting. Of course, it's long before the film, which is, a decade later. But it kind of anticipates that, doesn't it? With these
it does.
These whistling thugs who beat someone completely insensible and just leave him lying there. And it's like, they are quite unpleasant people, this gang. They're, like you said, they're every bit of paranoia that the tabloids had told respectable straight society to worry about.
Exactly.
Because we don't worry about things until somebody tells us to worry about them. That's just, we've replaced newspapers now whose powers are fading with social media. People will there tell us, you need to be worried about this, and these people over here and those people over there. We would never worry about them if we weren't told to do so. And
let me sell you something to cure that ill.
Exactly, yeah. I'm the one to come and save you from this entirely made-up threat. And, I've known in the past, I've known bikers, and the first thing I would have to say is we keep referring to them as a biker gang. They would be most annoyed, real-life bikers, if they heard us use that word, the G word. They don't like it at all.
Right.
They're a biker club. They don't like this sort of this sort of media-created invention that they're riding around in gangs. They're not the Hells Angels. That was a different thing altogether.
Yes.
And, in my experience, I've known a lot of bikers over the years. They are actually the loveliest people in the world.
It's like horror fans and metal fans. It's like
exactly. They just want to get on a motorbike and go for a ride. Sort of the wind in their hair and all the rest of it. And who can blame them for that? And they're not at all like they're sort of shown here. And it is a real worry that these films were showing.
Yeah, they perpetuate
kids to be like
this
that.
image that just isn't true.
I mean, don't forget that the rockers and the mods, they weren't bikers necessarily. They rode around on scooters and bikes, but they weren't bikers in the same way these guys are.
Right.
So they're a different breed altogether.
Yeah.
I'm standing up for bikers here. I'm not because I'm scared of them. Not in the slightest bit. They're lovely people, like I say. Honest guys, don't beat me up for saying you're a gang, please. No, they are lovely people, and I sort of bristle sometimes when I see this sort of representation of them. So, So
we've mentioned a bunch of them, Kev. Let's come on to talk about some of this cast of characters in a bit more detail.
Yes.
So our American tourist, who is kind of our audience proxy, isn't he? He's the kind of one that we follow around Weymouth, interacting with the biker gang and then the public servants and the soldiers and stuff who are involved in the experiments, and specifically Joan, who's also in the gang and is King's sister. Yep. But we get this tourist called Simon Wells, who is played by MacDonald Carey.
Yes, we're sort of back to the days, aren't we, of the imported American star?
Yes, exactly.
Which again makes you feel like more of a throwback than it
really
perhaps
does,
should do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he needed to be an American. Presumably Columbia said it'd be nice to have an American. We got a star here on our books, and he's fading a bit in the States. Could you find him something to do? The fact that he's American doesn't really figure that much in the film. The gang throw a bit of sort of anti-American epithets at him, but that's about it, really. But the thing to say about this character in particular, and all of the characters in this film, is the massive moral ambiguity in virtually every one of them.
Yes.
There isn't anybody in this film who's completely clear-cut. And we've got this guy who, MacDonald Carey was 48 when he started shooting this film. He's lusting after a character young enough to be his daughter.
Yep.
Who he then forces himself on, and she has this great line, doesn't she? You are dirty. You're just what King said you were. Yeah. Which is, terrific. And he admits it was clumsy and brutal. I mean, it's a little bit more than clumsy and brutal. That was bloody horrible, mate. That was awful. It was dreadful. But all of the characters in this film are really kind of morally ambiguous.
Yeah.
Almost to a fault. Even Joni, who I think is meant to be our other audience identification figure, she was in a gang, and it was Simon they were beating up at the beginning.
Yeah, she's the honey trap.
She's the honey trap.
He says to her, why did you pick me? And she's like, well, you look like you had money.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's got very few morals of her own, but she certainly doesn't deserve to be treated the way that she is treated in this. She's treated abysmally.
By both Simon and King, her brother.
Yeah. I mean, Simon later on, he sort of affects this sort of like, oh, yes, I'm in love with you sort of thing. But I don't know. I'm not buying that at all. I think he's just... I'm sorry, I think he's a dirty old man, to be honest.
I think do you know what? That is... I'm really glad. I'm really glad you think that, Kev, because that's absolutely how I see him. And all of this, I know... that, the 1960s and it's cinema.
Sure.
And I know that over on our sister podcast, Carry On Up the podcast, they talk about it over there, and we've spoken about it here. This idea that, two people will meet and they'll be engaged within the next sort of 3 scenes because everybody immediately falls in love in films. And, fine. They're
canoodling in the cave, aren't they?
Yeah.
And sort of they know what's going on at this point. They know there's this awful thing going on around them, and you just said, let's get married. It's like, no, you force yourself on me. You're old enough to be my dad. We've got a bunch of radioactive kids we need to rescue here. Get some priorities sorted, Simon.
But I mean, I think importantly, Joan does... Firstly, she doesn't suffer him lightly.
Oh, no.
Secondly, she sees through his bullshit because she is anything but a sort of innocent... I don't know, little sort of wallflower, is she? She's definitely a woman of the world already.
She's definitely King's little sister.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what she is. I don't know what their upbringing's been, because we don't get told that, but I'm imagining it was quite a tough one. Yeah,
I think so too. And you definitely get this impression that he's been her sort of protector for quite a while. Yes. But also, he is King. Oliver Reed's King is deeply unpleasant to her, to an almost inappropriate level. I think there's a line at one point where she says, you won't let me live, you won't let me even talk to a man, just because you've never had a girl yourself. And you get this feeling there's almost something beyond like sibling jealousy there, and he might...
There's an incestuous undertone to all of this, isn't there?
I think there
nothing has happened, but I think King wants that to happen. I think whatever has damaged these two kids has damaged him so badly that he wants his sister. Yeah. In this sort of, the biblical sense, he wants her. Yeah.
And one of the reasons that he is so angry and mixed up, I get the impression that is part of it. That's part of why, because he doesn't know what to do with these feelings that he's got for Joan.
He is, I think, in modern parlance, he is an incel.
Right.
He's he's this sexually frustrated man who doesn't know how to talk even to a woman, let alone do anything else.
No.
He just doesn't know how to communicate with any woman, and so he confines himself to Joni, who he knows and has known since she was born. But it's very creepy, isn't it? It's kind of a really weird undercurrent to it.
It really does. The sculptor, Freya, who I just adore, I think she's incredible. She calls him a very strange boy.
That's right.
And then later, when she's speaking to Bernard, she describes King as an unhappy, dangerous boy.
Yes. And he forces himself on Freya.
Yeah.
But doesn't go through with it.
No.
It's like he doesn't know how to.
Yeah.
Not even that. He can't even do the abuse because he doesn't know how women work at all. Physically or emotionally.
Yeah.
He's just completely useless. Thank God, because that means that, at least Freya and Joni didn't go through that. But... yeah, dangerous little boy. He's exactly what he is.
It's interesting, isn't it, that he dresses so differently from the rest of his gang as well, because they are all very much in, leather jackets and boots. And Joni's, oh my God, Joni kills me. She's so cute. So she's got on like a lovely little sort of, almost like a sort of 60s twin set, really.
Yeah.
And when she's on the bike, she's got this cute little bomber jacket on over the top, which is perfect. And these amazing biker boots, but she has her little sort of slip-on high heels on a piece of string that she's got it slung over her shoulder or around or like over the back of the bike or something, so that when she gets to where she's going, she can take off her biker boots and put her little slip-ons on. And it's just those lovely little moments, like, she's just got them on a piece of string. I just think that's wonderful.
I'm slightly distracted when she puts on a headscarf, because it's like, I associate that with my mum. My mum used to wear a headscarf.
Yeah.
And I was literally, while you were talking then, just doing the maths. My mum, when this film was made, was only 22.
Oh!
So, I came along the next year, she was 23. And that's what I was saying earlier about, sort of we have this generation who were putting off having children until later, but nowhere near like we would do later on. Mum was the ripe old age of 23 when she had me. But I just think it's really quite sort of cute in a way that this sort of this honey trap, this very attractive young woman who's part of a biker gang is going to put a headscarf on and look all sort of like a little middle-aged lady.
But of course, Kev, it's because she's up on the cliffs and she has to protect her hair.
Of course.
It's like when you get like Grace Kelly in the Hitchcock films, and she'll be whizzing around in a open top car, and she's always got to have a little scarf on to protect the do. Well,
the thing is, back then hairspray was far more effective than it is today. I mean, you could layer that stuff on and your hair would not move for a month. It didn't matter. The bomb could have gone off and your hair would have just stayed perfectly where it was. That stuff was toxic back then, I've got to tell you.
But isn't it interesting that King is dressed differently? Because he is dressed more like a mod than he is a rocker.
Again, it's that kind of, these guys are on the cusp.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
I think he's
more
in
sort of a tweed jacket. I think he's got a tie on.
He's outgrowing
and he's got
the
these
gang.
Like black leather gloves.
Yeah, he's outgrowing them. That's the problem. He's outgrowing his gang. And I think, that he knows that, and that sort of fuels a lot of his rage as well, that he's hanging out with these younger people, and that, he's the alpha male who's going to get overthrown any minute now by one of these young upstarts.
Yeah.
They all look up to him, but there is that little sense, isn't there, running through of it, he doesn't really belong with us anymore. Look at the way he dresses. He dresses like an old man.
Well, he does, and he's got sort of a long umbrella that he sort of almost, he's what do you call, sort of spinning it around the whole time.
That's
or he's got it over the crook of his elbow. And you could almost like stick a bowler hat on him and supply him to Westminster, and he sort of looks like, he's sort of a London gent, but he's not. He's kind of, as you say, in this in-between point in his life, but is quite... very emotionally sort of regressed, and so
that's right. Yeah, he's a very confused man.
He's wearing the uniform, but he sort of isn't there yet. So he's almost between two worlds, isn't he?
Of course he is, absolutely. Yeah, and he's like that. That, like I say, is what I think fuels a lot of his anger. That he's very jealous of this much older man.
Yeah.
Because Joni seems to be interested in him.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem all that bothered that Kenneth Cope's character quite clearly fancies the pants off Joni.
Right.
The way he keeps looking at her. And he doesn't seem bothered by that because he's just a kid. She'd never bother with him. He's just a kid. He's part of the gang. I can control that. The fact that, he's having to emerge into the grown-up world at last, I think that fuels an awful lot of his behaviour in this film. Yeah,
that makes sense. So we've got the sort of... then the main part of the plot and the people who kind of populate that. Basically, what is happening is there is this guy called Bernard who is sort of settled in Weymouth, and he has got this, as I say, sort of inevitable outlook that the bomb is essentially about to drop any moment. And he is in charge of this kind of government facility. He's got sort of soldiers under his charge, and they have got 9 little children. They used to be 11, but they've lost a couple to sickness.
Yep.
9 little children who have never seen the outside world. So they were brought to the facility as children. The facility is kind of up on the cliffs, and then it goes like down into these caves.
Yeah.
As you say, it's called what is it? Cliffside?
Edgecliff.
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 Edgecliff. And these kids, they sort of see Bernard and the other adults as their teachers. They call them their teachers.
That's right. Yeah.
And they are, they're being sort of schooled in the way of the world. But we're talking more kind of, completely theoretically, because none of them have ever set foot outside of this facility.
That's right, yeah.
And what we find out later is that they were born of mothers who had been exposed to a never-before encounter type of radiation, and never before to these levels. And what they find when these children come into their care is that the kids are, they're like, what do you call it? They're irradiated, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah.
And so their skin is soft, is cold to the touch. And the idea is that basically when the bomb drops, when this inevitable attack happens, that all the humans will die out, but you've got these kids who will be able to survive in the kind of nuclear winter because they are already irradiated. And so Bernard, who is played by Alexander Knox, is again this morally ambiguous character who on the one hand is supposedly doing all of this kind of for the good of humanity and the next generation, and is very caring towards these kids. And he's sort of talking about, we know that they've got a hideout down in the caves, but we don't let them know that we know because their mental health is important. And he refers to them as like his children, and all very sort of, caring. But also, the flip side of that is that he is keeping these poor little kids completely in the dark about who they are, where they've come from, what the actual situation is, and is keeping them cooped up away from the world, and essentially sort of doing experiments on them and keeping them for this like military / sort of humanist reason, in the most sort of loose of terms.
Yeah. I mean, we've said this before, haven't we, about sort of the human monsters in Hammer films. But this guy sort of tops them all, I think. For me, I think this guy is, again, I said it before, I can kind of understand why Dracula is doing what he does. It's to survive. I can understand why Frankenstein does what he does, because he's obsessed. This guy is just pure evil. He's absolutely repugnant. I know he thinks he's doing the right thing, but he really isn't.
No.
He's just awful, horrible, and brilliantly played by Alexander Knox. Because
superb.
When we first meet him, he seems very affable, doesn't he, when we first meet him? You know, and he talks about the violence of young people.
Yeah.
You know, he brings that, he's the one that brings that theme into it. And he's so good in this. He really is. And I think Losey, well, I know Losey liked him. Alexander Knox was Canadian but had been in Hollywood for a while, and the two of them had both been blacklisted in the 50s.
Oh, interesting.
You know, the McCarthy witch hunts.
Yeah.
And I think they bonded over that. And you're going to see him again in Modesty Blaze and Accidents, two more later Joseph Losey films, when he really goes into his golden phase, as it were. Mm-hmm. So he liked him as an actor, and I can quite see why, because this is a terrific performance, because you do find yourself, your feelings about him torn quite a lot of the time. At the end, you realise, yes, he's a monster, but you're never quite sure until almost the last minute.
Yeah, bloody hell, does he hammer that home?
Yeah.
Pun entirely intended.
Does he just? Yeah.
He really kind of, it's a very quiet and still performance, and what he's really doing is conveying that banality of evil, isn't he?
That's exactly it. It's my favourite kind of performance, the quietness.
Yeah.
You know, one of the reasons I love Clint Eastwood so much, you see him in those westerns and he doesn't move. He just stands rock steady and just looks at you. And there's very little quite as terrifying as that, to be honest. And I like quiet performances. I like the sort of the understated performance, and he's so good at that.
Yeah,
here he really is, and that's where the moral ambiguity is allowed to flourish, because he's not grandstanding. He's not
exactly.
The
no,
sort of,
he's
bad
not
guy.
doing
He's
that.
none of that.
He's not Mr. Burnsing it, you know.
He's not at all. No, he seems on the surface to be a very reasonable and respectable man. And, you know, that surface is like a millimetre deep, and it gets scratched away, you know, quite dramatically towards the end of the film. He
has this, I guess, girlfriend, do we want to refer to?
About as much as you could say that about a man like him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's capable of those kind of feelings, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
It seems like, so there's this character called Freya Nielsen, played by Vivica Lindfors, and she is a sculptress. She's visiting Weymouth, but you very much get the impression she's been there before. She's saying things like, you know, I always do my best work here.
That's right,
She's got this studio, which was the old pump house, as you said earlier.
That's right, yeah.
Up on the cliffs. And it's almost like she sort of, you know, she summers here or something. And she has this sort of on and off relationship with Bernard when she's in town. They might sort of spend a bit of time together and have a bit of a smooch. But she is a fascinating character, and probably more than welcome to argue with me on this, Kev, but I would say the exception to what you said earlier about all of the characters having some moral ambiguity, because I don't feel that so much with Freya. I think she's much more straight down the line. I find her much easier to like. I think she's a bit naive if she couldn't see through Bernard, basically. Although, you know, like I say, we don't see through him for a lot of the film. So, but you know, you would think if they were involved in some kind of relationship, she would have questioned, what is it you're doing at that
that strange establishment of yours? What are you doing? What's going on? She's too smart a woman not to have done that.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if she kind of had an inkling of something that was going on. She couldn't possibly have known it was, radioactive children, but she knew that something strange was going on. I kind of drew a veil over it, turned a blind eye to it.
She refers to him a couple of times as, you and your secrets or something. So you do get the impression that he's just doing that. You can't ask me about my work, kind of typical bloke thing. Yeah,
but I do agree. She is the most likeable of all the characters in the film.
I just love her in this, Kev. Vivica Lindfors has just perfectly, for me, embodied this sort of wild artist.
Yeah.
She does these quite unusual sort of anthropomorphic but sort of abstract sculptures,
which apparently were by apparently quite famous sculptress called Elizabeth Frink.
Okay,
I can't say I've heard of her. And apparently they were driven to the house in ambulances.
Oh,
there you go, a little bit of trivia for you. Do carry on. Sorry, I interrupted you for some nerdiness.
No, it's all right. Good trivia. But yes, she's. I don't know. She feels like quite a well-rounded character to me. She feels very much in contrast to Joni, who I know that I said earlier, she's sort of a woman of the world, but she's not really. She's a woman of Weymouth.
She is,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
She's a woman of the world in her very limited perimeter.
Yes.
Whereas
she's the queen of that gang, basically, but beyond that, she's got no influence on anybody or no experience of anything. So.
Whereas Freya very much feels like this sort of deep well of woman. And I just thought she was just remarkable in this film. I loved it every time she was on screen. I loved spending time with her. And
you'll have seen her in several other things, actually, in our neck of the woods. I don't know whether you're aware of this. She's in the 1973 Spanish film The Bell from Hell.
Okay.
She's Aunt Bedelia in Creepshow.
Never!
Absolutely. And she's also Nurse X in The Exorcist 3.
Oh my God!
Or to give it its official title, The Brilliant Exorcist 3, which is the official title. But yes, so you've seen her before, but of course in those films she was much older.
Yes.
And, here we're seeing her more in middle age, I think. She'd been in Hollywood since 1946, so she was no spring chicken at this stage, but she still looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and she's really, again, I think that is important because she's got that. I think it's interesting, actually. I know that you were being specific when you described her as naive and being naive to Bernard, goings on. But I get, again, she's got that age to her in contrast to Joni, who is 20, and her sort of naivety even around sort of her relationship with her brother, and then with Simon, and although she very much holds her own, and I really, really love her as a character, I think that it's just really lovely actually to see a part like Freya for an actress for Lindfors,
Well, when she's attacked by King, she kind of almost gets the upper hand over him.
Yeah.
That's why he can't go through with it in the end, because she's too clever for him. She's too worldly for him. Yes. He wants, a little girl he can control. And here's a grown-up, mature woman who's seen a lot, I suspect been through a lot. Look at those sculptures. I think they sort of scream, I've had a life, And, I think she's a really interesting character. She's certainly the one who, when she exits the film, as indeed most of them do, is the one that upsets me the most.
Same.
She's the one I was kind of hoping would make it to the end titles.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, she doesn't.
The other thing that the character's doing is she's giving us this kind of art versus science.
That's right,
isn't she? The kind of the coldness of the science, literally, in the fact that these little kids are cold to the touch, and they keep saying, like, Joni and Simon and to King when they come across them in the caves. She's warm. Do you mind if we touch you? We've never felt somebody warm.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. And so there is this coldness to the science.
Yeah.
And then there is this warmth to the other people that the kids come in contact with. But what Freya is really embodying is that difference between the kind of the science and the art. And she's always kind of, I don't know, wrapped in a shawl sort of up on the cliff with the wind blowing through her hair. She's got this kind of vitality to her.
She has a passion about her.
Yeah, but a passion that's so much more positive than the obsession of scientific hubris,
It's interesting to contrast her, don't you think, with Joni? Because much as I like Shirley Ann Field, she's absolutely stunningly gorgeous. She's great. But I always find her acting style a bit distant, a bit cold.
Yes, I totally know what you mean.
A bit icy, a bit ice queen. And it's interesting that these two women, this very young woman involved in this gang, is very distant, very icy. But this free-spirited, middle-aged artist up on the cliffs, we're venturing into Wuthering Heights territory here, aren't we? She's full of life and full of passion. And I think the contrast between the two women is really interesting. And Freya would make a much more age-appropriate partner for Simon if he'd just open his eyes and put his libido in check for a couple of minutes. He would see that this is actually probably a better bet for him because, she's terrific. She's a lovely woman.
Bloody Simon.
Bloody Simon, yes. Stop thinking with what's down there. Stop thinking with what's between your legs and with what's between your
I don't care that Joni
better.
Basically fell in your lap. Let's have some perspective, shall we?
Let's just step back a minute, Simon. Come on, mate.
So we've also got Major Holland and Captain Gregory, who are the kind of military men on the base, sort of running security, I guess, and making sure that they don't these little kids don't run away. So
what big brave boys they are.
I know.
What big brave boys they are. Nine little kids and they're armed to the teeth to try and keep them in control. Oh, you big heroes, you.
Oh my God. So Major Holland is played by Walter Gotell.
Yes, who we're about to see in the Bond films as General Gogol.
Yes,
so he's going to be keeping that kind of military bearing, but with a, Russian accent this time.
And he's in loads of them.
Yeah, he's in more than you think, and he's sort of like, it's not just the 60s ones. He comes back later on, I think in the 80s. Yeah. I think he's in one of the Timothy Dalton ones, if I remember right. So yeah, he was he was in it almost as much as Q was. He's a totemic figure for us Bond fans.
And Captain Gregory is played by James Villiers.
Terrific, as always. Again, I keep saying this about people in Hammer films. They're one of those faces. You probably look at him, you think, I don't know where I've seen him, and I can't tell you his name, but I know that face.
Definitely.
I know I've seen him in a million things, and he was a very hard-working character actor, and he's going to come back in. We're going to talk about him again, probably in a bit more length, but he's back in The Nanny.
That's right. He's the dad, right?
He's the dad, yeah, and Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, of course, he's back in that as well. So
two of my absolute faves. He's in 3 of my faves.
There you go, you see, a mark of quality. If James Villiers is in a film, you're going to do okay. Yeah. But they're terrific. They're really good because, they're very cold and very sort of, they're very military. But they do bring a little something to the characters.
Yeah, they do. They're not just...
They bring them to life a bit.
They're not just... a bloke in a uniform, are they?
No, that's right. No, there's a little bit more. They're blokes in a uniform, but we get the impression that they have got a life outside of the screen. And I think that's a hallmark of a really good character actor, isn't it?
Exactly what I was about to say, Kev. Yeah.
Right.
You could have had sort of anyone in these roles and you might not have even sort of thought to put them on the cast list, but because it's these two, they're worth a mention.
Of course, the fact that they stand out, the fact that you mentioned them, that you when you were watching it, thought, I'm going to write their names down. Yeah. That I think speaks volumes about their performance in this film because they are tiny roles,
precisely,
tiny roles, but they really stick out. And
then we have the children. And one thing that I noticed about the kids is that they're all named after kings and queens.
Yeah, and we got a character called King.
Oh, yeah!
You'd think they thought this through, really, wouldn't you?
So we've got Victoria, Elizabeth, Anne, Mary, Henry, Richard, Charles, William, and George. 9 of the most British names that you could possibly come up with.
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to strike fear into the hearts of the surviving Russians when the bombs drop, isn't it? That, sort of Victoria, Elizabeth, Charles and George are going to turn up.
Yeah.
Hello, old chaps. We're the super race now, don't you know?
Well, they can be Vicky and Liz and Rick,
be a
Charlie.
bit more street by the time, because they're going to inherit maybe they're going to inherit the world, but so don't mess with them. They're going to be all street at that point, But they're so good, these kids, aren't they?
They are so good.
Yeah, and it did. Most of them didn't go on to do very much else, to be honest. Only a few roles. There were 3 of them we should point out. Christopher Whitty as William. Mm-hmm. He did okay, did a fair bit, and his career culminated playing Jim in The Railway Children.
The Jenny Agutter one?
Oh, there is only one.
Oh,
there is only one, don't be ridiculous. Of course, only one. But Kit Williams as Henry, he had a decent run of films, and he became a TV and film producer later in life.
Great.
Nicholas Clay, who played Richard. You'd have seen him as an adult in films like Zulu Dawn. He played Mellors in the 1981 Lady Chatterley's Lover. He was in Evil Under the Sun. He was Lancelot in Excalibur.
Oh, okay.
Tragically, he died ludicrously young at the age of 53 of liver cancer in 2000, which is such a sad end. Yeah. But, he was the one that got the biggest career out of all of those kids. But I think they're all terrific. Really terrific, and so rebellious.
Superb. Very rebellious.
I mean, these are the kids that even King can't control. Mm-hmm. When he flees with one of them, and he sort of has to let him go basically because he just can't. He doesn't know what to do with him. This is the next generation down who are even more rebellious than King's generation, but with much more of a focus.
Yeah, that's right. So Henry runs off with King because he saves King when he falls off the cliffs.
Yes.
And this is the way that the adults kind of come into the caves and the sort of secret area where the kids have their sort of hiding place. And there's been this big chase. Simon and Joni sort of go over the edge and you think, oh, God, well, they're done for. But the kids sort of fish them out of the shallows and bring them into the caves. And then King is kind of hot on their heels. And it's Henry who finds King. Mm-hmm. And even though King is a bit mean to him at first, and he says, because he touches his cold skin and he goes, he's dead, and Henry gets very upset, as you would.
Yeah, as you would, yes.
But he then sort of develops this bit of a soft spot for King, and I think he almost sees him as a bit of a sort of heroic figure, or just a figure of
a bit of a big brother, isn't he?
Bit of a big brother, definitely a sort of figure of fascination.
Yeah.
And so when the sort of big escape happens at the end of the film, King is running towards the car and Henry's like, I want to come with you, King. And he sort of jumps in and refuses to get out.
That's right,
they drive off. And there's this tragic moment because, as we've said, these kids have never left the facility. And Henry is yelling in the car. He goes, whoosh, whoosh. It goes so fast, King. The world's so big.
Yeah.
And my heart shatters into a million pieces.
It's such a nice, easy throwaway line almost, which speaks volumes.
Yeah, it does. And there's another bit which is possibly even more heartbreaking when Joni has got one of the girls again after they've all escaped, and I can't remember which of the girls it is, but she says she's scared because the world's so big.
That's right.
And Joni says, look, here's something small, a flower, and she just gives her a little flower for this little girl to just concentrate on.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it sort of focuses her so she's not terrified by how huge everything is after her entire life in captivity.
Yeah.
And it's these moments that kind of lift the film over something like, I don't know, The Village of the Damned.
Right, yeah.
Where they're all just creepy kids.
Yeah.
And they all sort of feel like a bit of a sort of gestalt entity. Mm-hmm. Whereas here, they've all got their own little individual personalities. You've got Victoria, for instance, who's kind of the de facto leader.
That's right,
she's the bossy one.
That's
make sure
right,
that they all go to bed in time.
Yeah.
And what these moments do is they zero in on the individual children, and you get other moments like it'll pan around the cave walls and they've kind of set up little shrines.
Yes.
And it'll be sort of some bits and pieces, and then on the wall in chalk they've written William's mum and dad.
Yeah.
And then it'll say like Henry's parents and things. So they've sort of set up, and oh my God, it isn't just sci-fi creepy kids at all.
Oh, not at all, no.
And I went into this film thinking it was going to be a creepy kid film. It's not.
It's not at all.
You know, the establishment and the biker gang are the sort of baddies in this. The kids are pure victims.
I said earlier when we talked about Edgecliff establishment, it's not a facility, it's the establishment.
Yes.
The name of the facility that they're in is Edgecliff Establishment. So they're underlining it for us right from the start. You know, when we first see the sign on the gate,
right,
when we're going into the building, that this is the establishment we're dealing with. But I think, don't you think as well that in the end, whatever has happened to King and Joni to make them what they are, right at the very end, and it is literally the end for both of them, we kind of see what they could have been.
Yes.
Much more caring, much more sympathetic, much warmer. Suddenly Joni becomes a proper, really lovable person in her last few minutes. That iciness, she's let her guard down because King's not there anymore, so she can let her guard down.
Yes.
King has let his guard down because his gang's not around, so he can show his true self at the end with his bit with Henry. And it's just really heartbreaking stuff, isn't it?
It's absolutely heartbreaking. And when King, you know, like... God. You know, like when in a film or something, you're trying to get rid of a dog.
Yeah.
You have to be mean to the dog. Like, you're trying to do the right thing for the dog.
Yeah.
And you have to be mean to the dog to get it to go away.
That's right.
And you sort of have to throw rocks at it or whatever to make it stay so that you can leave it behind for whatever reason. He almost does that with Henry. He says, "You're poison, you know that?"
That's right,
and poor Henry just sort of hangs his head.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, he gets sort of snatched back by the military. But again, King is trying to do the best for him.
Yeah.
He knows that he's got no future if he stays with King. And and also, I mean, he technically is right. Like, he is poison. Like, all of them.
Sure.
King and Simon and Joni and even Freya, by that point, they've all been exposed.
Yeah.
So, you know that their days are numbered because of the radiation. So it's not like he's lying, but also I don't think he's saying it because of that.
No.
He's saying it because he's trying to do the right thing.
There is a little flicker, almost subliminal, a little flicker across his face, because this is how good Oliver Reed was. You know, we've said this before, that, he's often remembered these days for being that sort of oafish drunk that was on television all the time. He wasn't. He was a bloody brilliant actor.
Too right.
One of the best actors of his generation. Really, really good. And there's just this little flicker when he says to Henry, "You're poison." There's like a split second where you can see the regret on his face.
That's right.
Where, he kind of knows that he's got to say it to get Henry to leave him. And then, of course, the next thing he does is drives off. And
he drives on anyway.
And just drives over the edge of the harbour and kills himself.
Oh, God.
Because, not only because he's irradiated, I think, but also because I think he's become the person now who knows what a monster he's been.
God. It's so bleak, Kev.
It's so bleak. This is not a good time Saturday night film. This really isn't. You said earlier it's a gut punch at the end, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's nobody gets out alive, and it's just. It's genius, but it's just so affecting. It really is.
So what kind of brings us up to this is obviously Simon and Freya and King have sort of promised these kids that they're going to get them out. And so they kind of stage this escape. And Freya obviously then becomes embroiled in the escape and finds out finally what Bernard has been doing all these years in the facility, in the establishment. She says to him, "Children, Bernard."
Yeah.
You know? Like, just with those two words, it is this damning accusation. Children, Bernard.
I was going to say, has there ever been a more damning indictment of a character's actions?
No.
And the look on her face.
Yeah.
The look on Vivica Linford's face when she realises the penny finally drops and she realises just what a monster this man is.
Yeah.
Honestly, I cannot sing the praises enough of this film. We'll come back next week and do some more of this one.
But even at this point, he is completely remorseless.
Oh, yeah.
He says something like there's been 300 such accidents in the past 15 years, talking about the radiation accident that the children's mothers were exposed to. There's been 300 such accidents in the past 15 years. And if he could repeat the conditions. And she's like, "What, you mean you'd do all this again?" He's like, "Yes, of course I would."
Yeah.
And he says something like, an accident gave them these 9 precious children. And these, they sort of hold what they need that must sort of inevitably exist when the time comes.
Right.
And it's this idea that he says, "My children are the buried seeds of life."
Right.
And so he's basically keeping them locked up, buried in this cliffside, so that when this bomb inevitably, according to him, drops, they will emerge.
Yes.
They will be these seeds that grow out of the desert that's left behind.
Yeah.
And Freya says to him, "But what earth, Bernard? What earth will you leave them after all that man has made and still has to make?"
Brilliant bit of writing. I'm tearing up at the very thought of it. It's extraordinary, isn't it? It's just so powerful.
Yeah.
And done, because we've got these incredible actors, you've got Alexander Knox, you've got Vivica Linford. It's not done with grandstanding. There's no sort of accusatory screaming and shouting.
No.
It's
just two of them, like, sat on the bench, kind of looking out to sea.
She's just so weary of it all now. Yeah. And she's just... It's so horrifying. I don't think she can fully process it.
Yeah.
I think she's trying to, by saying what she does to him, I think she's trying that process of processing it, as it were.
Yeah.
She's trying to verbalise it and put it into her head.
Yeah.
But I kind of get the impression as well that these children now are kind of doomed because they've been compromised. Some of them have seen the outside world now. They're not the innocents that were there before, that they could control.
No, exactly. They know what they're missing.
And they are going to try to get out. And my feeling, ever since the first time I saw this film, is right at the end, they've been abandoned.
Oh, God.
Those poor kids are still down there. That whole thing, that just those voices, "Please help us, please help us." And there's this extraordinary shot where one of the last shots we see in the film, it's the camera focuses on the beach at Weymouth, where you've got presumably families and kids having a lovely day out on the beach, while over the top you've got these poor kids screaming, "Help us, somebody help us." And oh my God, anybody that sort of watches this film and doesn't come away from it moved, seek help.
You're as cold
Honestly,
as the skin of those irradiated children.
Yeah, and it's like, you must feel something for those children at the end. And just the fact that I think that they've been abandoned, I just think that's the horrifying last twist, as it were. You know?
God, I didn't even clock that they'd been abandoned. That's even worse.
Because what can you do with them now? What can you do with them? Because he makes a point, doesn't he, that they weren't going to tell them until they were sort of like 18 or 21 or something about what was going on, when they were old enough to understand it. And now we've got to explain to this bunch of little kids why we've been keeping you locked up. Away from your parents. Who knows what they did to their parents? You know, did they kill the parents? You know, like, who knows? But they've been locked away in this cave for their entire lives. They've now seen the outside world, particularly Henry, you know, who's captivated by it, just, you know, completely blown away by how gorgeous the world is. And now they've got to go back into that cave.
I know, exactly.
You know, they've got to abandon the project. It's not going to work anymore. And it's just, what happens to those poor children?
Bernard offers for Freya to kind of join him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So now she has been exposed to the children. At one point, she sort of wraps one of them up in her shawls, I think.
That's right, yeah.
And so do you get the impression that part of his offer, sort of, you know, come and, you know, help me with them, then he basically says, which is his way of basically saying, you know, I'll keep you quiet.
That's right,
Do you think part of that offer is kind of, you know, he's got like some sort of treatment that will, you know, save her life from the sort of atomic effects?
Can I be incredibly cynical?
Oh, yeah, go on.
I would say she's still of childbearing age. Need I say more?
Oh, God, that's horrible.
It is horrible, but he's there in the film, I think. Or maybe it's just in my head, which is even more terrifying. But I think, you know, I do believe that's in the film. I do believe that...
Oh, my God.
Yeah, maybe he just sees her as the breeding factory for the next generation of these kids.
Oh, my God, that's so horrible.
Sorry, I brought you right down now, haven't I? So, sorry, everybody. It's, you know...
I thought this film was bad enough as it was, but now you've told me that and the kids have been abandoned. I'm like, right, well...
I'm here to spread the joy, you know that, always. Always and forever.
But, of course, she refuses to join him, and so he shoots
her, her. And that's why I think he doesn't have a cure for it, because he doesn't care about her.
No.
I think she knows that if I join this thing, I know exactly what my fate is going to be.
Gross.
I'm just going to be, you know, sort of the mother for the next generation of these kids. And she just, like, I'm not having this, and he just callously kills her.
And the thing that really pisses me off about it as well is he doesn't even do it face to face.
No.
He retreats back up on the upper cliffs while she is kind of stood by her studio and her sculptures. And he shoots her from, like, up on the cliffs.
Yeah, and you can't get up too close. That's personal.
Bastard.
So, you know, he just snipes her, basically.
Yeah.
And you know what? I was going to use a word that I shouldn't use on a podcast, but you know the 4-letter word I mean. He is. That's exactly what he is.
Yeah.
He's horrible. He's an awful human being. He's not even that, is he?
No.
But no, and it's just like the horrible thing is, we talked last week about Lord Ambrose Darcy Ambrose, whatever, getting away with it at the end of Phantom. Bernard just wanders off.
Yeah.
He's free. He's still out there.
Yeah.
Still doing whatever monstrous experiment he's got lined up next. Another bunch of these kids. There's been 300 accidents already. How many kids have they got in storage, as it were?
Oh, God.
Yeah, exactly. So, God, this film is so bleak. It really is. I'm sorry, if you're listening to this, you know, on a day, it's a lovely sunny day, you're having a nice day, and all's going well. Well, I'm sorry, but, you know, this is how this film plays out.
Don't worry, guys. We're back to vampires next week.
Yeah. We're going to be having a lot more fun. This is a brilliant film, but it is a complete bummer the whole way through.
It is. So, Oliver Reed's King drives off a bridge and drowns in his car. Simon and Joan go off on Simon's boat. She's already showing signs of radiation poisoning because she's gone cold. And he's looking a bit peaky as well. Bernard has shot Freya, so she's dead. All of the military men scoop up all of these kids who are sort of running in opposite directions or are just being comforted by the nice adults, and they just drag them kicking and screaming back into this facility. And then, as you say, Kev, we pull out and we are looking kind of at the sea, the crashing waves, the cliffs, the beach, and over the top is just this continuous screaming,
this pleading for help,
children pleading, help, please help us, somebody help us, help us, help us, somebody help us, help. And it just goes on and on and on, and then it's like credits.
That's
and
right.
I was sat there, I was like, oh my god.
What? There's no music, if I remember right, at the end, is there? There's just the credits just roll, and you can still hear them screaming and shouting.
Imagine if they just went straight back into the black leather song.
Oh god, no, luckily the Hammer were far more tasteful than that. In lesser hands they would have done that just to sell a single or something, but no, it's just completely bleak and unremittingly so. There's nothing jolly about this film at all. Can you imagine what people must have been like in 1963 when this film came out, seeing that and trooping out the cinema and thinking, what's the point? What's the point in carrying on if this is what life is like?
I've seen films where you'll sort of go with friends, and maybe you're not prepared for quite how bleak it's going to be at the beginning, and then we've come out of the cinema, and usually it would be like, if we'd seen something like, the new Scream film or something. Right, pub,
we need to chat about this. Yeah.
Exactly. You come out and you just kind of look at each other and just go, cool, well, see you soon then, I guess.
We'll never talk of this again.
Yeah, just go your separate ways.
Well, you made the comparison earlier. You said it was like Quadrophenia meets Threads. And the only other time I felt that sort of winded at the end of a film was Threads.
Yeah.
Much more so at the end of Threads, I think, because it's, horribly realistic and could happen, to anybody. But
it hasn't got that sort of sci-fi element.
It hasn't, no, exactly. But sci-fact, yes, which is far more chilling. But I think this has that same impact for me. That same sort of, it's in the same ballpark. That sort of bleakness, that kind of, when you finish it, your first instinct is, I need some Laurel and Hardy, or I need to watch Rick Mayall, or I need to see someone who makes me laugh like a drain, because I can't go to bed now having watched that. I'm going to have nightmares all night. I'm just feeling horrible. But it's horrible in a kind of, stick with me with this, horrible in a kind of enjoyable way, because you've been manipulated by a master filmmaker.
No, definitely. I mean, I love this film. It is a startling piece of work. I absolutely loved it. But it's not a Saturday night with beers and pizza film. No.
It's one of those films I have to think about it before I recommend it to people.
Yeah.
Are they going to be okay with this? They're not big horror fans, they're not big science fiction fans. Are they going to be okay with that ending? And it's like, some people I know probably wouldn't be.
Wow. Okay. Well,
that's silenced us, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Doesn't happen often.
Where does it rank? No, before we get on to where does it rank, let us go back to something a little more cheery.
Yes,
or at least let's talk about some of our favourite moments from the film. So,
well, I'm gonna pitch for the helicopter scene.
Yes.
For two reasons. One, I absolutely love helicopters. I'm a plane nut. I'm an aircraft nut. As I'm sitting here talking to you now, I've just picked up the current work in progress Airfix model that I'm making. And I'm flying that around the microphone. So there you go. I'm a complete plane nut, and helicopters, I love helicopters. So that was always going to appeal to me. But some great stunt flying. This big old Westland Whirlwind, which is a big old helicopter, very low to the ground.
Yep.
Really dramatic. And the other reason I wanted to mention it is because, nerd alert, we should have a little klaxon, shouldn't we? Kev's going into nerd mode again. But,
just Homer Simpson.
Just, nerd! But that helicopter, one of the helicopters that we're seeing, was in fact going to turn up again at the very end of A Hard Day's Night. It's the helicopter the Beatles get into.
No way!
To fly away from the concert. It's the exact same helicopter.
That's very cool.
And it turns up again a year after that in Michael Winner's comedy, You Must Be Joking. So it's a star in its own right, this helicopter.
A celebrity helicopter.
A celebrity helicopter.
And there you go, Kev. We've slipped in our Beatles mention for the episode as well.
We did,
so.
Yeah. I haven't been able to crowbar Doctor Who in. Oh, there you go. Right,
there
okay, so I can move on. Right, like the motorbike chase. We've talked about the motorbike chase.
Love
and
it.
that dog. I think that dog's hilarious.
Yeah.
Just the way sort of, Ollie reacts to it. Get out of the way. He goes back. And of course, the ending. We've talked enough about the ending, but they're the key moments in the film for me, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with all of those. The other bit with the helicopter, as well as just it flying very low behind King's car, is when you then get two of them and they land like in front and behind him on the road. So it's like they set up like this roadblock on either side of the car so he can't escape. And he ends up having to sort of drive over the dunes, doesn't he, to sort of get away?
He does, yeah. And I love the way Losey sets that up, that you see Henry and King in the car talking to each other, and suddenly you realise there's this dot in the sky behind them.
Yes.
And there's no grandstanding again. There's no, hey, here comes the cavalry. It just gets closer and closer and closer till you realise, oh, God, there's a helicopter chasing them. And they haven't seen it yet. It's beautifully done.
It's
beautifully
incredible. Shot. It really, really is good. The other of my favourite moments would be that POV shot that I talked about at the beginning. I thought that was just great. It's so simple. I can't really put my finger on why it resonated with me so much, but it's just, I've never seen a sort of POV walkthrough where I have felt so in the shoes of who we're following, you know. It was amazing.
Sometimes simple is best.
Yeah, well,
sometimes simple can be highly effective.
Yeah, absolutely that. And then there's one other line that I just want to find is brilliant. Henry is really annoyed when they're in the caves because Victoria's telling him to go to bed, and he's like, no, I want my turn on the monitor or something. He wants to go and have a look outside or something like that. And He says, I've never seen anything. You've seen these people, and Richard saw a bird once.
Yeah, I know.
And the delivery is spot on. I loved it so much.
It's another one of those things which is so funny, but heartbreaking at the same time.
Not absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it definitely really is. But
the writing in this, you know, whichever one of them, you know, the three writers involved actually came up with all this dialogue, my hat is off to you. Yeah. Those lines of dialogue are priceless, and like you said, the way Henry delivers that,
it's because it's almost like an out of the mouths of babes moment, because he doesn't know it's tragic.
No, of course not.
He's just being, you know, 11.
He's
he's just being a kid. Like Richard's seen a bird, so I want to see one. Yeah, exactly. Whereas to us, we're like, oh God.
I know. It's brilliant. Work of genius, isn't it? Work of genius.
Amazing stuff. Yeah. So how did this one do for Hammer?
Well, as I've been saying all the way through, this was shot in 1961, but didn't come out until May 1963 when it was put on a double bill with Maniac.
Right.
And I think part of the problem was Hammer didn't really know what to do with it when they saw it.
Right.
Because he was so bleak. Because he was so cerebral, dare we say, much more intelligent than most science fiction films at the time. What were you supposed to do with this film? You know, they'd stopped making this kind of film up until now, so there was nothing immediate to double bill it with. And so they put it out with Maniac, and I think audiences didn't quite get it, to be honest. By the time it had come out, The Servants, which was, you know, Losey's first massive hit, that had been released, and so Hammer were able to capitalise on that a little bit, I think. And because he'd now become the darling of the critics, Hammer were in an unusual position of actually having positive reviews for their film. This hadn't happened before, you know, but because it was Joseph Losey and because it is a bloody brilliant film, they were falling over themselves. And it fared even worse in the States, sadly. It didn't open until July 1965 under a new title, These Are the Damned.
Wow.
And it was cut by 10 minutes. It was put on a double bill with Henry Levin's epic, Genghis Khan.
Right.
And so to get as many screenings in as they could, they lopped 10 minutes out of the Damned, or These Are the Damned. So they butchered a work of art.
I was going to say, what on earth
Yeah.
would you cut from this film?
I know, because every scene is vital.
Yeah.
Every scene, every character, everybody is vital to the telling of the story. So what could you... It must have been completely incomprehensible, I would imagine. And the film did sort of fall into a bit of a limbo. I found it very difficult to find it when... I know it was shown on television here in the UK, but it was always on very late at night when I was young, wasn't allowed to stay up. And I don't think I saw it until the 1990s, by which time I'd seen most of the Hammer films already.
Yeah.
Because it was just so hard to get hold of. And it just fell through the cracks because it didn't fit. It didn't fit the psychological horrors. It certainly didn't fit the gothic horrors. This was this incredibly bleak film.
Yeah, because even Quatermass and X the Unknown, they're big monster movies, aren't they? They've sort of got big blobby things that you can, add. You can sort of market it on that.
That's right. And Quatermass, of course, you could sell because of the TV series.
Well,
so they had
yeah, of course.
But this, I mean, how do you sell this to people?
Yeah.
Have we sold it to people, or have we just turned people off? It's a worry.
No, you have to see this film.
You must watch it.
In fact, let's do the important bit. Kevin, I'm not even going to beat about the bush. We're going to rank this, and this is going straight into elite for me. I thought it was a remarkable piece of work.
I could not agree more.
Yes!
Nail on the head. This is one of my... It's not just one of my favourite Hammer films, it's one of my favourite films of all time.
I can see why.
It's a brilliant film. It's not a fun time film, but it's a work of art, is what this is. This is proper film art, and absolutely elite. It was always going to be elite. And I said to you off mic before we started that I was really worried that you hadn't ranked this on Letterboxd, and I was thinking, what if she hates it? What if she gets to that ending and thinks, oh my God, why was Kev raving about this? But I'm so delighted, more so than any other film, I think, that you love it as much as I do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, don't worry, I love a bit of bleak.
Good, excellent. That's what I like to hear. We don't associate bleak with Hammer, though, do we? You see, so
we don't. No, we don't. And do you know what? It's really lovely, actually, as we continue on this journey with Hammer, to repeatedly see that they were not a one-trick pony. They're not just the studio that started with a couple of interesting sci-fi and then pivoted into gothic, and that was it.
That was it.
Are then, making films like this, and
they were taking chances, and they always were. And that, I think, is not always entirely understood, particularly by its critics, of just how daring Hammer were and how willing they were to try things like this, which I don't think any other British production company would have touched this. Because it's just so uncommercial.
Yeah.
But Hammer, we'll do it. Let's do it. Let's go for it. And they did it. And it's like, now, okay, it wasn't a great hit at the time, I don't think, because people didn't get it. But now I think it is very highly regarded, and quite rightly so. Yeah,
quite rightly so. Well, I'm off to watch something very fluffy and frivolous to cheer myself up.
I'm just going to have a little lie down and think about the world. So...
Thanks for listening to Hammer Time. Next week, as I said, don't worry, guys. We're back with the Gothic Neckbiters with 1963's Kiss of the Vampire. If you're watching along with the podcast, this one is available to stream on Tubi at the moment, or you can pick it up on DVD. To check out the full list of movies we'll be covering throughout this podcast, head to evolutionofhorror.com/hammer. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us questions or comments for upcoming mailbag episodes. You can drop us an email to hammer@evolutionofhorror.com. You can follow the Evolution of Horror Network on Instagram at EOH_network. You can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky at Bunny Darke, and I'm on Letterboxd under Becky Darke. And Kev, where can people find you and your work?
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Blue Sky. And Letterboxd. Yes, I'm on Letterboxd as well. So come and have a look at Letterboxd and see how much of my life I waste watching really bloody awful films. Because I look at my list sometimes and think, really, Kev? Is this what life has come to?
Don't forget to rate and review us on your podcast app of choice. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for another episode of Hammer Time.